I was unwrapping my lunch in the break room when my phone buzzed again, text number blocked, but the message was clear. You deserve to know what's happening. My heart rate spiked so fast I felt it thumping in my temples. I looked around. My coworker, Dave, was 2 cubicles over, sipping his black coffee, oblivious. I forced a shrug, tucked my sandwich back into its wrapper, and walked outside to the courtyard. Rain was drizzling, typical Pacific Northwest gray, but I barely felt it. Instead, my mind raced back to the past few months, her sudden weight loss, those odd excuses about late work nights, the tension simmering whenever I asked about girlfriends. Now, this anonymous tip made it official. My wife had been sleeping with one married coworker for over a year, and starting a second fling with another married guy right under my nose, both at her office. The world spun. I froze under the umbrella. My knuckles turned white as I gripped the phone. That flurry of emotions, anger, disbelief, shame, felt like a punch in the gut. I didn't want to fall over. My vision blurred for a second. I fought the urge to puke. Finally, I dropped the umbrella, forced a step forward, and told myself, get a grip. I had 9 years of marriage for context, 4 years married. Whole thing began sophomore year in college, same circle of friends. We moved here 3 years ago when I got tapped for an engineering gig. I was proud, good salary, decent benefits, and a house near the Sound. She was in sales and marketing, pulling in better money than me. Sex life was normal, vacations decent, weekends camping with pals. We never had kids, but that conversation was brewing. This year, I thought it'd happen. Then I noticed a shift. First, as she dove deeper into her career, I saw her male study buddies at grad schools suddenly reemerge. Some looked harmless, until those late-night texts. Small comments slipped out. You're so funny, I miss you when you're gone, can't wait to see you alone. When I pressed her, she'd flash that practice grin and say, calm down. He's just a friend. My gut tried to warn me, triangles, jealousy baiting, subtle jabs at me when she wanted attention. I chalked it up to ADHD and mood swings she struggled with. I convinced myself I was overthinking. But that text forced the picture into high definition. I finished my coffee, wiped my mouth, and dialed my buddy Mark. He picked up on the second ring. Hey man, he said. I struggled to keep my voice steady. Mark, I just got a tip. Looks like Sarah's been hooking up with 2 guys at her work. Both married. Both, you know. He went silent for a beat, then said, dude, I'm sorry. You okay? I forced out. No. Not okay. I ended up blurting out everything I noticed, her weight dropping, those off comments about being just friends. Mark told me to breathe, which only made me aware of how shallow my breaths were. He offered to swing by that evening to talk. I said no, I needed time alone to process. I left work early, feeling numb. At home, the door was slightly ajar, as it often was. I stepped inside and heard the TV in the bedroom. She was watching some crime drama. The place smelled like toast and coffee, our usual Saturday morning scent. I stood in the hallway, phone still in hand, watching her scribble notes, as she followed the plot. I cleared my throat. Hey, I said, voice low. She looked up, flashing a half-smile. Everything good at work? She asked. I kept my face blank. Text said different. She hesitated, blinked. Who's texting you? I tightened my jaw. Anonymous tip. Says you've been sleeping with. I stopped. I realized I was shaking. She exhaled, closed her notebook. You're being paranoid. She snapped and flicked the TV off. I stood there, umbrella still dripping, heart in my throat. For a moment neither of us spoke. Then she turned, looked at me like I was insane, and said, I have no idea what you're talking about. A classic deflection. I walked to my desk in the corner of the room, sat, and stared at my phone. I tried to call her, no answer. I left her a voicemail. We need to talk tonight. I'll be home early. She texted back. We're fine. Relax. The lie tasted like bile. I ended the call and hit the couch, head in my hands. My chest felt like it was being squeezed, lungs burning, sweat on my upper lip. After 10 minutes, I stood, grabbed my iPad, and slipped it under my shirt so she wouldn't see. When she got up to refill her coffee, I snatched her iPad off the charging stand, unlocked it with a swipe. Her password was Hockey123. Always so obvious. Within minutes, I'd synced my work iPad with hers. I set it on my lap, opened WhatsApp and Signal. Within 10 minutes, I had the proof, a backlog of messages going back to summer 2022. Hundreds of lewd pictures, graphic sexting, declarations of love signed. Yours always. From the first married guy, call him. Long-term guy. 35, 2 kids. I saw how she begged for just one more night. Right before my birthday. I saw screenshots of him promising to divorce his wife. Once it's safe. She'd responded. I love you more than life. My mouth went dry. My stomach lurched, cold sweat erupted down my spine. I couldn't look at the images too long. Then I tapped on the second contact. Short-term guy. Around 50, loud voice. The messages weren't as emotional, mostly lusty invites to meet up during lunch breaks or after work. But they were real. She gave him her office badge number so he could swipe her in, so no one would notice. I replayed a voice note of her whispering. I wish you were here right now. Recorded at 2:14 a.m., date stamped 6 months ago. My head pounded. I pressed the screen until they blurred, closed the iPad with a slam, and felt a surge of nausea. I staggered to the bathroom, opened the cabinet for Advil, took 4, then stared at my reflection. My eyes were red, bloodshot from holding back tears. My jaw twitched. I ran cold water on my face, watched droplets roll down my cheeks like cheap tears, except they weren't tears of relief. They were horror. I peeled off my shirt, saw my ribs more visible than usual. Stress had knocked 10 pounds off me this month. My arms felt weak, like I'd been running a marathon. I splashed water again, shrugged and forced myself to face it. I wasn't staying under this roof another minute. Half an hour later I had 4 duffel bags in my truck, clothes, my laptop, tools, a few sentimental items, my grandfather's watch, photo albums. No contact with her. I texted my boss. Family emergency. Need extended leave. He responded immediately. Take whatever time you need. Let me know if I can help. That tiny shred of support felt like a lifeline. Then I called my best friend, Ben, who lives an hour away with his wife. They both answered on speaker. I didn't say much, just, I'll be there in an hour. Lock in the guest room. They didn't hesitate. That's when I exhaled and something in my chest cracked. I drove out through the city, past evergreen trees slick with rain, breaking only at a coffee shop for a black coffee and a bagel, the first thing I'd eaten all day. My hands shook as I lifted the cup. I felt raw, hollow. I texted her dad. Dad, I need you to know what's happening. Call me if you can. He called back within minutes, voice thick. Son, are you all right? I choked out. She was two-timing me. 2 different guys, both married, both from her office. I've got the proof. He was silent. Then he said, I'm coming out tomorrow. I'll be there, whatever you need. That night, I stayed at a dingy motel room with a single bed. I lay there in the dark, stared at the ceiling, pressed my hand against my chest, and thought. She took everything. 9 years of my life. My trust. A hollow ache settled in my gut. I had trouble sleeping. Every time I closed my eyes I saw the messages, the phone screenshots, her face telling me, I love you, while she was telling someone else the same. The betrayal knifed deeper with each memory. Next morning, I got coffee with Ben. He patted my back. Let's get a plan, he said. I nodded, wiped my eyes. A few days later, I called an attorney. My hands trembled when I explained the situation. I want a file. I want her held accountable. I want custody of my stuff and I want her out of our lease. He asked for details. I sent him screenshots of messages and a summary of events. He said, We'll begin drafting the petition. You'll need to decide on financial support, whether you care about her job situation, and how to divide assets. I felt my stomach tighten again. Financial planning, division of 401k, splitting debts. But I nodded. I'm ready. Back at my friend's house, I gathered laundry, caught up on work emails to keep my severance on track, reviewed bank accounts, and opened a separate checking account so her bills wouldn't drain my balance. I set up a P.O. box for any mail she might send. I called the landlord and said, I'm giving notice, 2 months. I'll pay until then. I wanted to protect my credit and not end up on the hook for rent alone. By Christmas, family had cleared out. I spent Christmas Eve alone in that motel room because the in-laws lived abroad. I skipped the tree. I turned on holiday music just to feel normal, but I kept it low, too many happy jingles. I stared at the fake fire screen on the TV, thinking back on last Christmas, both of us, smiling in matching sweaters, lighting the fireplace together. Today, those memories felt like someone else's life. On December 27th, my attorney called and said the divorce papers were ready. I drove down to her work on a gray, drizzling weekday and gave them to HR. They handed them off to a process server. Minutes later, I texted her, "You've been served. I'm sorry it ended this way, but I can't stay." She didn't respond. Part of me wanted her to fight, to beg, anything. But I kept to my boundary. My next step was to publish a short announcement on social media. I'm separating from Sarah. We've had irreconcilable differences. I wish her well, but I'm moving on. I posted it at 8 a.m. and then logged out. While scrolling, I saw a notification. John Doe and Jane Smith commented. My chest fluttered, but I ignored it. That afternoon, I called the 2 affair partners. The older guy didn't pick up. I left a voicemail. You helped destroy my marriage. I want you to know I'm filing. I plan to let your family know. I hung up. My heart pounded. The younger guy, the one she'd been with for a year, answered on the 3rd ring. I kept my voice steady. This is Jason, Sarah's husband. We need to talk. He stammered, said he had nothing to say, slammed the phone. I exhaled and felt a bruise form in my chest. It wasn't enough to scare him. That night, I went to a small dive bar, just me and 2 lagers, sat at the counter, and stared at the amber liquid. The bartender didn't ask questions, just slid me the beer. I gulped it down, felt it warm my chest. I thought about where I went wrong. I won't pretend I was perfect. Work took most of my time, sure. I stopped surprising her with weekend getaways, and I got lax about date nights. But none of that justifies betrayal. That's on her. 2 weeks later, everything was in limbo. She stayed with her sister. I stayed with my friend. My head cleared. Sleep came easier. I started counseling, just once a week, because I couldn't stop replaying her texts in my head. It was exhausting, like I'd run a mental marathon every night. I needed a professional's help to sort out the tangle inside me. By mid-January, my wife's sister called me. She's losing weight, Jay. She can barely eat. She's on leave, but... I cut in. Look, I don't want pity. I want closure. She sighed. She says she regrets it. She says she's sorry. I replied flatly. Your sister's apologies aren't enough. Actions speak louder. The rent was up in March. I moved into a small studio downtown, just 1 room, but mine. I bought a cheap couch, a small bookshelf for my work files, and a futon. The first night, I set up a tiny Christmas tree leftover from a friend's discard bin, strung it with lights. It made the room glow. I sat on the floor, wrapped in a blanket, sipped tea, and thought, this is my space now. I felt the weight in my chest shift, less crushing. A month ago, I ran into the younger affair partner at a coffee shop. He looked embarrassed when he saw me. I said a curt, "Hi," paid for my Americano, and walked out. No words exchanged. That was enough. I realized that dragging things out, confronting them, only wasted my peace. The fewer words, the better for me. Financially, I consolidated our joint accounts into mine, moved 401k contributions to a solo account, and changed beneficiaries where needed. I sold our old mountain bike on Craigslist, couldn't bear it sitting in storage. In exchange, I bought a second-hand road bike to commute to work, feel the wind again, clear my head. Every pedal stroke felt like putting distance between her and me. I still hear from her sometimes, 1 or 2-word texts. Sorry, please. I don't respond. My attorney told me to keep no contact. My counselor said I needed that space to heal. And so far, that's what I'm doing, riding my bike at dawn, coffee at a tiny cafe near the harbor, reading books I abandoned during our marriage. Last night, I fell asleep reading Hemingway. Something about his plain talk feels right these days. I don't want to paint myself as a martyr. I wasn't perfect. I should have noticed the signs earlier, those little hints of triangulation, her mood swings, the way she closed her laptop so fast when I walked in. But I trusted her. I gave her every reason to trust me. I never snooped until I got that anonymous text. My responsibility was keeping our home stable. My mistake was maybe not paying closer attention to her emotional distance. I own that. But what she did, hundreds of messages, images, bed hops with 2 married coworkers, that's on her. There's a pattern. She craved attention, she manipulated 2 guys at once, lied to everyone. I can recognize her manipulation now, shifting the blame onto me for being checked out, painting herself as the victim battling depression and ADHD. I see how she twisted every tear I shed into proof that I didn't care. Now I'm left standing in the wreckage, but I'm hammering out a new structure, one where I don't let myself get burned again. I keep my doors, and my heart, shut until trust is earned. I schedule calls with my parents every Sunday. I meet weekly with my counselor. I've even started volunteering at the local Boys and Girls Club a few hours per week, shifting my focus from heartbreak to helping kids who need stable role models. It feels good to do something constructive. I heard she started seeing her therapist, probably the same counselor I recommended. I don't know if she's facing any real consequences. Her career might be over, she's lost her home. Her in-laws are giving her the cold shoulder. That's on her. I don't wish her harm, but I can't pretend her actions didn't break everything. Tonight, I'll cook myself steak and watch a game at my friend's place. I'll laugh with guys who know me well, who won't ask about her. Tomorrow, I'll take the day off, ride up to that mountain trail I've been eyeing, and see if my legs can carry my weight. Pain is still there, tightness in my chest, nights when I wake up gasping. But I'm stronger than the pain, and I have to remind myself of that every morning. One day, maybe I'll date again. Maybe not. But I know now what real looks like: honesty, respect, no hidden messages, no half-truths. I swallowed my pride, admitted my part, and I refused to be the doormat. I trust my gut now. I'll let her face her fallout: lost job, lost friends, lost respect. Natural consequences, they're hers to bear. Meanwhile, I'll rebuild my life, north-facing windows and all, on foundation I can stand on without fear of it collapsing. That's my story so far: a man who faced betrayal head-on, protected his finances, his health, and walked away without apology. I might still be raw, but I'm alive, and that, I decide, is enough.